A little boy points at a police officer in court. What he said left everyone speechless. The courtroom was silent, a heavy stillness that seemed to press against the walls. The air was thick with tension, the kind that made even the faintest rustle of paper sound like a thunderclap. All eyes were fixed on the small figure standing in the witness box, a 7-year-old boy, his hands trembling as they gripped the wooden railing. His face was pale, his wide eyes darting nervously around the room. The judge leaned forward, her voice gentle but firm. "Do you understand why you're here today, Ethan?" The boy nodded, his lips quivering. Then, slowly, he raised a tiny hand and pointed directly at the police officer sitting in the front row. The officer's face went rigid, his jaw tightening as the boy's finger remained steady, unwavering. "It's him," Ethan whispered, his voice barely audible. "He's the one who hurt my mom." The room erupted. Gasps echoed like a wave, and the officer shot to his feet, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. The judge slammed her gavel, but the damage was done. Every person in that courtroom was now on the edge of their seat, their hearts pounding with one burning question: what could a 7-year-old boy possibly know that would bring a police officer to trial? But this wasn't just about a boy pointing a finger, this was about a secret so dark, so deeply buried, that it threatened to unravel the very fabric of the town. In just a few moments, Ethan would say something that would leave the entire courtroom speechless, something that would force everyone to question everything they thought they knew about justice, loyalty, and the people they trusted most. What could a child possibly reveal that would shake a seasoned police officer to his core? And why did the officer's eyes flicker with something that looked an awful lot like fear? Ethan wasn't supposed to be here. He was just a kid, a quiet, shy boy who loved dinosaurs and spent his afternoons building forts out of cardboard boxes. His world had always been small: his mom, his dog, and the little house on Maple Street where they lived. But everything changed that night, the night his mom didn't come home. Ethan had waited by the window, his face pressed against the glass, until the headlights of a police car finally appeared. But it wasn't his mom who stepped out, it was Officer Daniels, the man who always waved at Ethan from his patrol car. That night, though, there was no wave, just a grim expression and a story that didn't add up. "Your mom's been in an accident," Daniels had said, his voice too calm, too rehearsed. "She's gone." But Ethan knew better. He'd seen the way Daniels' hands shook when he said it, he'd seen the blood on his uniform, and he'd heard the words his mom had whispered to him just days before: "If anything happens to me, Ethan, don't trust anyone, not even the police." Now, standing in the courtroom, Ethan wasn't just a scared little boy. He was the only one who knew the truth, and he was determined to tell it, no matter how much his voice shook. It all started with a drawing. A week after his mom's death, Ethan's teacher noticed something unusual. While the other kids drew rainbows and superheroes, Ethan's pictures were dark scribbles of a man in a police uniform, a woman lying on the ground, and a car with its headlights shining like angry eyes. When the teacher asked Ethan about it, he burst into tears. "That's Officer Daniels," he said. "He hurt my mom. He made her go away." The teacher reported it, and suddenly Ethan was thrust into a world of lawyers, detectives, and courtroom drama. The police department dismissed it as the ramblings of a grieving child, but Ethan's grandmother wasn't so sure. She hired a relentless defense attorney who believed Ethan's story and who was willing to risk everything to uncover the truth. The trial was a whirlwind of tension and disbelief. The prosecution painted Ethan as a confused child, traumatized by his mother's death and lashing out at the closest authority figure. But the defense had a different theory, one that involved a corrupt officer, a cover-up, and a secret that could destroy lives. As the days went on, Ethan's testimony became the centerpiece of the trial. He described the night his mom disappeared in vivid detail, but the defense needed more than a child's word, they needed proof. And that's when Ethan dropped the bombshell. "I have something," Ethan said, his voice trembling but clear. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, crumpled piece of paper. It was a receipt from a gas station dated the night his mom disappeared. "My mom gave this to me," he explained. "She said if anything happened to her, I should give it to someone who could help. The receipt had a license plate number scribbled on the back, a number that matched Officer Daniels' personal vehicle. The courtroom erupted again, but this time the tension was different. This wasn't just a child's accusation anymore, this was evidence, and it pointed directly at the man who was supposed to protect and serve. But proving the truth wasn't easy. The police department closed ranks, and Ethan's credibility was called into question. The defense attorney faced threats, and Ethan's grandmother began to fear for their safety. Then, in a shocking twist, Officer Daniels took the stand. He looked directly at Ethan, his voice steady and calm. "I didn't hurt your mom, son. I tried to save her, but sometimes bad things happen, and we can't explain why." For a moment, even Ethan doubted himself. Had he gotten it wrong? Had he accused an innocent man? But then he remembered his mom's words, "Don't trust anyone," and he knew he couldn't back down. The final day of the trial was electric. The defense attorney presented new evidence, security footage from the gas station that showed Officer Daniels arguing with Ethan's mom just hours before her death. The receipt wasn't just a piece of paper, it was a trail leading straight to the truth. When Ethan took the stand one last time, he didn't tremble. He looked directly at Officer Daniels and said, "You hurt my mom, and I'm not scared of you anymore." The room fell silent. Even the judge seemed to hold her breath. The defense attorney then turned to Officer Daniels, who had been stoic throughout the trial. "Officer Daniels," the attorney began, "why did you kill Sarah Mitchell?" Daniels' face twisted in a mix of anger and desperation. He finally broke his silence. "She was going to ruin me," he admitted, his voice low but filled with venom. "She found out about the money, the drug money I was taking to keep quiet. I was deep in it, and she threatened to expose me. I couldn't let that happen. I couldn't lose everything." The courtroom erupted in gasps and murmurs. The attorney pressed further, "So you killed her to protect your secret?" Daniel's eyes darted around the room, finally landing on Ethan. "I didn't mean to," he said, his voice cracking. "It was an accident. We argued, and she fell, but I panicked. I covered it up. I thought I could make it go away." Ethan's eyes filled with tears, but he didn't look away. "You're a liar," he said, his voice steady. "You hurt her on purpose, and you tried to make it look like an accident." The jury deliberated for hours, the weight of Ethan's testimony, the damning evidence, and Daniel's shocking confession pressing heavily on their minds. When they finally returned, the courtroom was so silent you could hear the ticking of the clock on the wall. The foreman stood, his voice steady but solemn. "We, the jury, find the defendant, Officer Daniel Grayson, guilty of obstruction of justice and manslaughter in the death of Sarah Mitchell." A collective gasp swept through the room. Daniel's face went pale, his hands gripping the edge of the table as if it were the only thing holding him up. Ethan sat quietly, his grandmother's arm around him, tears streaming down her face. The judge nodded, his expression grave. "Officer Grayson, your badge and uniform once symbolized trust and integrity. Today, they stand as a reminder of the betrayal you've committed. You are hereby sentenced to 15 years in prison with no possibility of parole." As the gavel came down, Ethan felt a strange mix of relief and sorrow. Justice had been served, but it didn't bring his mom back. Still, as he walked out of the courtroom, he held his head a little higher. He'd done what he came to do, and somewhere, he liked to think, his mom was proud. If this story touched you, hit that like button and drop a karma in the comments below. And hey, if you want to see more stories about justice being served, check out the playlist appearing on your screen right now. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. Remember, real change starts with you, one smart move at a time.